It's a moment Reiko Iwanaga traveled hundreds of miles for. A chance to see...
Okay, so this is the Ireichō.
A book without a prologue, chapters, not even a single sentence.
Grace Fumi Akahoshi.
Yes, my mother, yes.
That's your mother?
Yes, good.
The Ireichō is 1,000 pages of simply names.
You need to find your name.
Okay.
Reiko Adrienne Akahoshi.
Each representing the countless, often suppressed stories of Japanese Americans forced into what are widely known as internment camps during World War II.
What is it like to see your own name in the book?
It's an acknowledgement of what happened.
Here is the actual bombing of the mighty USS Arizona.
For the U.S., the bombing of Pearl Harbor marked a pivotal turning point. The United States declared war on Japan. But it wasn't just those halfway around the world who paid the price.
Notices were posted. All persons of Japanese descent were required to register.
Not long after the bombing, then-President Franklin D. Roosevelt issued Executive Order 9066, a directive that began with curfews and voluntary evacuations, but ultimately paved the way for the incarceration of more than 125,000 people of Japanese ancestry in America. The majority, U.S. citizens, ripped from their homes and businesses and forced into camps.
Your family was well established with a business.
Yes, yes.
And forced to leave all of that behind.
Right. Absolutely.
Was that difficult for your parents to
Most
process?
definitely, right. My grandfather had a cleaner's right where San Jose City Hall is now. And my father had a store further out.
They were all born in California. They were born in San Jose and raised their children in San Jose. And to have all that taken away within the span of a couple of weeks, everything, and it just is, it's a really terrifying thought.
Families were only allowed to bring what they could carry, many forced to burn the rest. Entire lives were condensed into suitcases in an instant, sent by bus and train thousands of miles from their West Coast homes. Men, women, and children cramming into 10 main camps, often in remote areas, enclosed by barbed wire. Their crime? Merely looking like the enemy.
Living in that zone were more than 100,000 persons of Japanese ancestry. 2/3 of them American citizens, 1/3 aliens. We knew that some among them were potentially dangerous.
It took more than 40 years for the U.S. government to formally apologize.
My fellow Americans, we gather here today to right a grave wrong.
And now, another 40 years later, we're learning for the first time exactly how many innocent people were impacted. The culmination of a painstaking process led by USC professor and Buddhist priest Duncan Yukon Williams.
What inspired you to pursue creating this book?
The idea of giving back people's names, giving them individuality again in a way that their personhood wasn't acknowledged by the U.S. government back in World War II.
It's surreal. It's just, I can't believe this happened to my family.
Reiko's daughter Maya by her side to see and stamp their family's names.
Why was it important for you to be with her?
It's a tangible representation of what her generation and the generation before went through. It was super emotional turning that corner.
Getting emotional right now. There is an action step to this monument. Why is that key for the Ireichō?
We wanted to have some method, in this case, placing a small a Japanese hanko or stamp underneath the name of a person to acknowledge and thereby remember. And in many ways, I think it's the community that's coming together today to acknowledge all of these names. That's the monument.
The Ireichō has grown into a pilgrimage point for thousands of camp survivors and their descendants. The very block where thousands boarded buses for camps 81 years ago is now home to the sacred Book of Names, on display here at the Japanese American National Museum until October.
Janum is one of those ground zero points in the civil rights history of this country. So there's enormous power of place to have this book here.
The journey to see the Ireichō and tell its story is also a personal one. My own family was incarcerated in 1942. My grandparents just 7 years old at the time. Growing up, I learned about their experience in bits and pieces.
We had these canvas cots, fold-out cots. You had to fill these bags with hay. And that's what we slept on.
But it wasn't until I sat down with my grandfather, or Jichan in Japanese, for a school project that I began to understand the weight of such an injustice. I interviewed him for 4 hours.
The guard motioned me to get away from the fence with this gun. And I just curious because by looking through the fence, I could see our old farm. I still remember. You can see that road right through the barbed wire fence. And so I always questioned why I was in this internment camp.
Even before the camps, the discrimination was unavoidable. He recalled being surrounded by an army convoy during one family drive.
And as we're driving down, I guess they realized we were Asians or Japanese. And the truck driver rammed us and drove us into a ditch. I'll never forget that. And as the truck went by, all the guys in the back of the truck were laughing at us.
Now, more than 8 decades later, I had the chance to reflect on such racial injustice.
A lot of Ikedas in this book.
Paging through the Ireichō to find my loved ones' names. My great-aunt Chiz, grandmother Eiko, and more.
So this is Fumio Norman Ikeda. Fumio is my grandfather's brother. So they were very young in the camps. Actually, when he was in the assembly center, he dislocated his hip falling, going up into the barracks, and he was denied care for months. And so now he still has a limp to this day. He suffered permanent damage because of it.
Ikeda.
Eventually, we turned to the year 1934 to pinpoint my grandfather.
That's my grandfather. I'm going to get him. I just know this would be.
Quickly taken aback by a wave of emotion.
He's since passed, so it's so meaningful to get to stamp his name. I just know this would be really meaningful for him.
I think this is your grandfather.
Oh my gosh, there it is.
A stamp of acknowledgement.
Oh, absolutely.
Do you have any memories of him?
Oh, most definitely, because he came with us and was in the same room with us, actually. Oh, so significant.
Those with firsthand accounts of life in internment camps are dwindling.
There's something about the physical act of stamping their names that feels like, okay, we're countering any potential erasure of their stories.
Yeah.
Sitting within the walls of barracks, the memories came racing back to now 84-year-old Ireichō, one of the last of an interned generation.
More than anything, I realized as an adult how difficult it was to live 5 in a room with a baby and a grandfather in the conditions that we were in, and to see how stark it was, and the fact that they made such a life out of it.
A page in history the Ireichō is making sure is never erased.
Why is it important that this period in history continues to be taught?
Because it could so easily happen again.
And it is happening with Asian American hate and other aspects.
The Ireichō is not a grand monument carved from marble or etched into granite. Its strength stems from the people who come to pay tribute and acknowledge a painful history, fighting to keep this from happening again.
With each stamping, that power grows. With each participation, with each person coming, experiencing that, the power of that monument grows.
Emilie Ikeda, NBC News.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.